Hello there, fellow model makers. Welcome to the first part of this beginner's guide to building your first kit. For this time's beginner's guide, we have chosen Academy's 1/72nd scale F4U-1 Corsair. But before we get cracking with the kit, I would like to answer some questions I had when I was starting out. Well, for one thing, I did not know one manufacturer from another. Who was the best? Which one should I go for? What was the difference between a 1/72nd scale and a 1/48 scale kit? Should I build a World War II plane or a modern jet? Which would be easier? And so forth. I can't be sure, but I suspect that these are the kind of questions that any first-time scale modeling enthusiast may still have. So I will try and answer some of these questions best I can. First, let me take you through a few of the well-known manufacturers. I happen to have their kits lying about. This kit is by Academy, a well-known and popular manufacturer from Korea. Here's a name you will come across regularly, AFX. A large number of scale modelers start off with an AFX kit. Another hugely successful kit manufacturer is Revell. This 1/48 scale kit is by Hasegawa from Japan. This Stuka is by Italeri. I personally love Italeri kits. And another manufacturer known for their quality production is Tamiya, once again out of Japan. And this beautiful kit is by Edward from the Czech Republic. They are known for making superbly detailed kits. So which manufacturer should you go with? Well, you can pick any of these manufacturers as well as several others well-known ones that I did not mention here. The important question for a beginner is not who made the kit, but rather, when was the kit made? You see, plastic kits have been around for decades, and there are still some really old kits in circulation. Usually these older kits are a lot harder to put together. So I would recommend that no matter which manufacturer you pick, just make sure that the kit is relatively new. No earlier than 1990. If you can get a kit that was made in the 2000s, even better. The newer kits are likely to fit together better and have better detailing and engineering. Now let's talk about scale. Modeling kits range from really small scale to really big ones. As a beginner, I would advise you to stick to the mid-range size. These two kits are a 1/72nd scale, an ideal place for a beginner to start. Not too big or overly detailed, and neither so small that painting it becomes a challenge. Of course, if you are a little more adventurous, you could even try your hand at a 1/48 scale kit, like these ones by Revell, Tamiya and Edward. Let me give you an idea of scale. These kits are 1/72nd scale. The one on the left is by Edward and the one on the right is a Revell Spitfire. You can see that the planes are fairly well detailed and they were easy to put together. Now let me put this Italeri 1/48 scale Sea Hurricane alongside. And this is a Tamiya F51 Mustang. As you can see, the 1/48 kits are larger and usually have much more detailing than the smaller cousins. Okay, one more thing that you need to keep in mind is the aircraft you pick. Now both these kits are single-seat fighters. Here is another 1/72nd scale. This is an AFX Dornier. Even though this too is a 1/72nd scale kit, you can see it is much larger. And the reason for this is simple. This is a bomber. And since it was larger than fighters in real life, so is its scaled down version. The last thing you might want to consider about scale is the aircraft's vintage. Let me put a modern jet fighter along these World War II legends. New age planes tend to be much larger than the ones that were flying around in the World War. In conclusion, my advice for your first kit would be to pick a relatively recently manufactured kit in the 1/72nd scale, preferably a World War II fighter aircraft. But that's just what I think. Now that you have a fair idea about scale and manufacturers, you can make up your own mind. Right then, with the mini lesson over, let's open up our kit. Incidentally, this kit was made in 1998. The box art is nice. I guess we will be painting our kit in this scheme. The side of the box has some pictures of the completed kit, and I must say these are looking encouraging. Nothing more of interest on the box, so let's look inside. We have this big plastic bag with the sprues inside. There are a total of 3 plastic sprues and 1 clear sprue with the canopy on it. Before we move on, let me just show you one more comparison between a 72nd and a 48 scale kit. Here is the same kit in a Hasegawa 148 scale. Let me just compare the fuselage size of both the kits and show you. There you go, the 48 scale is quite a bit larger than the 72nd scale. I just thought as a beginner this is something you might like to see. Anyway, moving on. The plastic on our kit is beautifully molded, with very nice detailing and crisp and nice recessed panel lines. Also, there is no flash or extra unwanted plastic on the pieces. The canopy is very clear and transparent, that's always nice. And here's the decal sheet. Looks okay. We have the option of making 2 variants here. Let's take a look at the instruction sheet. It's in black and white and in the fold-out format. As you make more kits, you will find that some instruction sheets are a joy to read, and some others not so much. Many kits now come with colored booklet form instructions that are very well detailed. Anyway, I guess these appear fairly clear. Here is a recommended color callout. As you can see, the kit calls for a number of colors, but we will not be following these. In fact, we will be doing this build as if we had no specialized colors at all. Here are the 2 variants. We will be doing the multicolored first scale, the aircraft flown by Commander Tommy Blackburn in 1943. Before we start cutting pieces of the sprue, I would like to take you through some of the tools I think are essential to start off with. This is a hobby knife. There are various versions and styles available. You can easily go online or to your nearest hobby store and buy one. Next, you will need a side cutter like this one. To start with, you can use a cutter that you get at your hardware store, but eventually you may want to get one that is specially made for cutting scale models. Lastly, you will need these sanding sticks. Now these ones are used for filing nails and you will get them at any beauty salon. While there are special sanding sticks made for modeling, I found that these nail sanders do the job just as well. Anyway, for your first few kits, these will do just fine. Right, let's get on with it. I start off by cutting the cockpit parts of the sprue. While using the side cutter, I try and not cut flush against the kit part. Despite these cutters being very sharp, when you cut too close to the part, there is always a chance of damaging it. So instead, I leave some plastic on the part and then come in later and cut away the extra plastic with my hobby knife. This way, I have more control over the cut. If need be, I polish off the surface with a standing stick. Now to glue some pieces in place. I will be using Tamiya's extra thin cement. I highly recommend that you should get this. Next, I cut off the fuselage halves. I do a dry fit. Dry fit is the process of trying to predict any upcoming problems with the fit of the pieces. You just take the parts and fit them together without any cement and see how they fit. If there are any issues that you can see, these can be corrected now rather than later when you have wet cement or glue all over the parts. The remaining pieces of the cockpit are also cut off and placed on these cocktail sticks or toothpicks which have some blue tack stuck to their ends. A common kitchen sponge serves as the base. Once again, this is a good way to paint and manage small pieces that you don't want to glue on the kit immediately for the fear of breaking them. The cockpit needs to be painted in color number 8, which the color guide tells us is interior green. Now there is more than one paint manufacturer who offers this color ready-made. However, my assumption is that this is your first kit and perhaps you don't have specialized colors lying around. So, what to do then? Well, in this series I will use common paints that you get anywhere and try and paint this kit with them. The idea is to focus on getting a good clean finish and a good looking kit rather than trying to be historically accurate. With time, you can always start focusing on being more historically accurate. For now, we will be happy if we can get a reasonably good job done. I will use two types of paint for this kit, oils and acrylic. To start off, I will paint the cockpit and engine with oil paints. These are the cheapest oil paints I could find in the stationery shop. Let's see how they perform. I take some turpentine and mix green paint in it. Next, a dab of yellow to give it that interior green look, or thereabouts. Right, into the airbrush, and here we go. Now the good thing about oil paints is that they take a long time to dry, so any mistake that you make can easily be rubbed off. The problem with oil paints is that they take a really long time to dry. Even hours or days after you've painted, you may still smudge them or leave a fingerprint on them. If you have no other alternative and must use oils, then make sure you give them a long time to dry before handling the kit again. On the upside, the paint is covering well, and though it takes me several layers to get the plastic completely covered, it does work and it's not looking bad. I will also paint the wheel wells and the inside of the landing gear covers with the same paint. The paint scheme requires us to use another color for the wheel wells. But for now, let's keep things simple and use this one only. As you can see, I am painting these parts on the sprue. This is helpful when painting small parts. I gave the paint 24 hours to dry and then hand painted some details on the inside. Once again, I have to give this new coat several hours to dry before adding any more details. Okay, now may be a good time to introduce aftermarket parts. Aftermarket parts are parts that you don't get with the kit, but buy off the market to enhance the kit. For example, our kit does not have any pilot harness. So we will use one of these, a set of plastic belts I bought for 1/72nd scale British planes. But I will use these just to demonstrate how a little bit of aftermarket can really improve your kit. One can bend these fine mold belts by heating them in some warm water or with a hairdryer. But for now, I just cut them to size, paint them, and glue them on the pilot seat. It's time now to paint the instrument panel. I already painted it black and let the color dry. Now we will highlight the details with dry brushing. This technique is fairly simple and very effective. I take a flat brush and dip it in some white paint. Then I take off almost all of the paint by wiping the brush on a paper towel. Now very gently I start brushing the instrument panel. With each stroke, a tiny bit of paint gets applied to the panel and only to the raised details. There you go, looks good. Now I take a very fine tip brush and randomly paint some dials in yellow and red. We have now painted the entire cockpit area, so we better protect our work. We do this by applying a layer of gloss varnish. Once again, there are a number of modeling specific varnishes available, but we will use this Winsor & Newton varnish that you can get in any art store or stationery shop. Once the varnish dries, we will give the cockpit a quick wash. We take some turpentine and mix some black oil paint in it. We keep the mix very thin. Next, we take our brush and apply this watery wash on the cockpit and other parts we have painted. You can see how the black wash collects in recessed features of the cockpit and highlights them. A few minutes later, I remove any excess wash with a brush dipped in turpentine. You can substitute the turpentine with an odorless spirit. Time now to start gluing everything together, starting with the cockpit. Now that the cockpit is in place, we need to glue the two fuselage halves together. And now I can show you why Tamiya Extra Thin Cement is such an asset to any modeler. I take the two halves, fit them together without any cement or glue. I use some tapes to hold them together. Now that the parts are aligned to my liking, I take the extra thin cement and just run it along the joints. The cement works on capillary action, so it seeps down the joint, melts the plastic and forms a new bond between the two separate pieces. No fuss. I use some clamps to squeeze the pieces together. With the fuselage halves glued together, let's start working on the wings. I have painted these two tiny pieces for the air intake black, and I dry brush some aluminium paint on them. Once that is done, the tiny parts are glued on, and now the wings are glued together as well, one wing at a time. Finally, the wings and the fuselage are cemented together. While gluing parts, I move very slowly and carefully, trying always to minimize the gaps between two pieces. Once the wings are in place, I glue in the horizontal stabilizer as well. Right, fellow model makers, I guess that is all for part 1 of this beginner's guide first kit series. I hope you enjoyed the video. Next time, among other things, we will paint the engine and the kit, and I will also show you how I mask the canopy for painting. Till then, have a great time and good luck with your modeling projects.